Have you ever had those days where you feel just unstoppable, clear, focused, all good,
hmm
and then other days you're just battling inertia, feeling dull, maybe kind of lost in a fog?
Yeah, absolutely. We all know that feeling.
Or perhaps you look around, you see people, some are constantly buzzing with energy, ambition, others maybe get easily frustrated or just seem stuck.
Right. These shifts, these different energies within us and that we see in others, they're universal experiences.
So why are we this way? What are these like fundamental forces that seem to shape our moods, our actions, even our personalities?
Well, that's a question humanity has been asking for millennia.
Mm-hmm.
And for this deep dive, our source material takes us to a really ancient text that offers a, well, remarkably sophisticated framework for understanding these very patterns, the Bhagavad Gita.
Ah, the Gita, a profound source for sure. And we're looking specifically at chapter 14, I believe.
That's right, chapter 14, which dives deep into this concept of the three gunas.
Big gunas. Okay.
Exactly. These are described as the fundamental qualities or modes of nature that influence pretty much everything in creation, including us, obviously.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Our mission here is to understand what these guna, sattva, rajas, and tamas actually are, how they show up in our lives. And maybe most importantly, does the text suggest a way to, move beyond their constant pull and push?
That's the core of it.
This feels like it could offer some significant insights into why we feel and act the way we do, maybe even a kind of shortcut to understanding ourselves better.
I think so. And to really grasp the gunas, the sources first give us a little bit of context, a picture of creation itself. The Gita uses the simile of womb of creation, yoni or garbham.
Oh, womb. Okay.
Yeah, and it describes this divine partnership at the root of everything.
Right, like a sort of cosmic parentage idea. There's Purusha, the conscious principle, the seed-giving father.
Aham bija pradapita, as the text says. That's the conscious spark, you could say.
Yeah.
The efficient cause.
And then there's Prakriti, material nature, the great unmanifest. That's the womb, the Brahma Mahatyoni.
Precisely. Prakriti is the stuff everything's made from, the material cause.
So together, this conscious principle and this material nature, they get everything into being.
That's the picture. And it's from this material nature, from Prakriti, that the three gunas arise. The text puts it simply. Sattvam rajas, tamaiti guna, prakrisamhava sattva rajas, and tamas are born of material nature.
So they're fundamental building blocks, these gunas, but they aren't just passive, are they? The sources seem very clear they have a powerful effect on us, on the embodied self.
Yes, and this is really key. They're described as qualities that bind the indestructible eternal soul to the perishable body. Nibadnanti mahabahu dehe dehinamavyam.
Bind the soul to the body. Wow.
Think of them as the forces that kind of tie our awareness down to the experiences of the physical world, the mental world, creating this sense of limitation, maybe even illusion for the true self.
And it's not like we're stuck in just one guna constantly, right?
No.
You mentioned they interact.
Oh, absolutely. That's a crucial dynamic. They're always interacting. One guna can gain prominence, can overpower the others at any given moment.
So sometimes sattva is strong, sometimes rajas kicks in.
Exactly. Sometimes tamas. The text says, Rajastamaya Kavipuya Sattva Havati. Sometimes sattva prevails over rajas and tamas, for example. Our inner state is this constantly shifting landscape, really, ruled by whichever guna happens to be dominant.
Okay, this is fascinating. Let's spend some time really understanding each one. What about sattva, the first one?
Right, sattva. This is the guna of goodness, purity, harmony, light. It's described as being born from a state of clarity, freedom from negativity or illness, nirmalatvad anamayam. It's generally seen as the most elevated of the three.
You'd think being in a state of goodness, purity, that sounds great. Why would that bind us? Seems counterintuitive.
It does, doesn't it? But the text says it binds subtly. It binds through attachment to happiness and attachment to knowledge. Sukhasana badnati janasam kanakana.
Okay, so we get attached to feeling good or maybe proud of understanding things.
Precisely. We start wanting only those clear, peaceful feelings, or we identify too strongly with our knowledge or wisdom. It's a subtle trap.
I can see that. So how does sattva manifest when it's really strong, when it's predominant?
Well, when sattva is really flourishing, the text says there's this radiance of light and intelligence throughout the whole system, body and mind. Sattva prakasha upajyate janarata dadavidyad vidota sathamitiuta.
So you feel clear, perceptive, calm.
Yes, and engaged in activities that feel inherently pure, joyful. The natural fruit, the outcome of sattva, is knowledge, understanding sattva sanjayate chanam.
That definitely sounds like a state we'd all appreciate more of. But then there's rajas.
Ah yes, rajas. This is the guna of passion, activity, energy, desire. It's said to be born from craving and attachment, raga vishaya sakya.
This feels very familiar, like the energy behind so much of modern life, maybe? Constant doing, striving, wanting.
Exactly. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And it binds primarily through attachment to action. Karma sayana dehnam.
Attachment to action.
Yeah, rajas fuels ambition, big projects, intense relationships, really. Anything driven by desire, expectation, or that need to achieve, to do. It creates obsession, attachment, those feelings of wanting something.
And when rajas is really running the show, what does that look like?
Well, the manifestations are things like greed, intense, sometimes restless activity, constantly starting new undertakings, aramha, and just a general sense of agitation or being unsettled. Lalha, pravatir, aramha are some key indicators mentioned.
And the fruit of this?
The fruit of rajas is described as avarice or intense craving, rajaso loha ivaka. It leads to this potentially endless pursuit of sensory experiences, chasing the next thing.
And the feeling associated with that is often...
Loss and tension, stress, dissatisfaction, really.
Okay.
Because the wanting, the craving fueled by rajas, it never truly finds lasting fulfillment.
Right. Okay, so we've got sattva's clarity, rajas's restless striving, which brings us to the third guna, tamas.
Tamas, this is the guna of, well, ignorance, inertia, darkness, delusion. The text says it's born from ignorance itself, ajana jiviti mohana.
Born from ignorance. How does this one bind us?
Kamas binds by leading us into states of delusion, laziness, negligence, even excessive sleep. It essentially covers over our awareness.
Covers it. Like how?
It causes forgetfulness, confusion. It makes us forget our true nature. It obscures clarity.
Okay. And how does tamas show up when it's predominant?
When tamas is strong, there's a sense of darkness, heaviness, a lack of activity or initiative, apaluti. There's inadvertence, carelessness, pramada, and outright delusion or confusion, moha.
That sounds like that feeling of being really stuck, unmotivated, maybe escaping through too much sleep or distraction.
Exactly that. A general dullness, an inability to see things clearly. Its fruit is more of the same. Inadvertence, delusion, ignorance, pramadamatamasa, pavatujanam evaka. It just obscures proper understanding.
Okay, so we have these three fundamental forces. Sattva pulling towards light and peace, rajas pushing towards action and desire, and tamas dragging towards darkness and inertia. And the sources say these aren't just like personality types, they have real consequences.
Oh yes, very real consequences, both in this life and, according to the text, beyond.
Let's talk about this life first, the short-term impact.
Well, living predominantly in sattva tends to yield pure results, peace, tranquility, clarity. Sattvika nirmala phalam. Feels good, essentially.
And rajas?
Rajas, while it drives activity and achievement, ultimately yields pain, tension, stress, because of that constant unfulfilled striving we talked about.
Makes sense. And tamas?
Tamas predominantly yields ignorance, delusion, a lack of clarity. It leads to mistakes, inertia, suffering born from not understanding.
You can really see these patterns play out, can't you? In yourself, in others. Those moments of ease, then periods of intense drive and maybe anxiety, then times of just feeling foggy and stuck.
Definitely. And the sources take it a step further, connecting this dominant guna to what happens after death.
Right, the evolutionary fruits idea. What does it say?
It suggests that the guna most predominant at the time of death influences where the soul goes next, so to speak. Dying with sattva strong leads to ascending to higher, purer worlds, realms, conducive to further spiritual growth. Safi pralayat yati urtha.
Okay. And if rajas is dominant at death?
Then one is said to be reborn in the human realm, specifically among people who are attached to activity, driven by work and ambition. Rajasi palaya gatva karmaso jajate. You basically come back to the sphere of action and desire.
Back into the thick of it. And tamas?
If tamas is predominant when one dies, the text says one takes birth among the most deluded potentially in lower planes of existence, maybe even the animal kingdom. Tata pralinas tamasi mohayonyo jayate. It reflects sinking deeper into ignorance and delusion.
Wow. But the key thing here you mentioned is that it's not some sudden judgment at death.
Exactly. That's crucial. The predominant guna at death is seen as the natural culmination, the reflection of the dominant nature you cultivated throughout your entire life. It's cause and effect.
That's a really powerful thought. Our internal state right now, day by day, is literally shaping our future trajectory, which of course leads to the huge question, are we just stuck with this? Are we just puppets of these gunas forever?
Right. Are we just tossed around by clarity, then craving, then confusion, endlessly?
Can we actually get free?
And this is where the text offers hope,
Mhm.
shifting focus in the later verses from verse 19 onwards. It shows that yes, transcendence is possible.
Okay, how? What's the key?
The fundamental understanding, the shift in perspective required, is realizing that the gunas themselves, being born of prakriti, material nature, are the actual actors. They are the ones doing things, not the true self.
Wait, say more about that. The gunas are the actors.
Yes, the text says, Yadadrata Pashati Nanyagocha Kartaram, essentially, when the seer, the observer within, sees no agent of action other than the gunas.
So it's not me who is angry, but it's the guna of rajas manifesting as anger through my mind-body system.
Precisely.
It's not me who is feeling lazy and foggy, but tamas is creating that state of inertia.
Exactly that. You start to see the gunas as forces moving through you, rather than defining who you are.
So the solution isn't to destroy the gunas, but to change our relationship with them.
That's the core of it. You shift your identification. You stop identifying with the small self, the ego, the mind and body that are constantly influenced by the rise and fall of the gunas.
And you start identifying with
With the higher self,
Okay.
with the pure witness consciousness, Sakshi Chaitanyam, sometimes called. This awareness is inherently beyond the gunas. It just observes their play without getting caught up.
like watching a movie instead of thinking you are the character on screen.
That's a great analogy. The movie, the play of gunas, continues, but you know you are the watcher, separate from it.
Okay, so what happens when someone actually achieves this? When they make that shift and transcend the gunas? What does that person, a gunatita, the text calls them, what do they look like? How do they act?
Arjuna asks this exact question in the Gita. What are the signs? How do they behave? How do they go beyond?
Perfect. So what's the answer?
Well, the signs described are less about specific external actions and more about their internal state and orientation. The absolute key quality is a kind of indifference or neutrality towards the effects of the gunas themselves.
Indifference, meaning.
Meaning, when sattva brings clarity, or rajas brings activity, or tamas brings dullness, they don't cling to the pleasant ones or push away the unpleasant ones. They don't welcome or resist. They simply observe. Nadviri sampravatani nandivatani karaiti. They don't hate them when they arise, nor long for them when they cease.
So they aren't desperately seeking that sattvic clarity or fighting against tamasic inertia when it comes.
Exactly. They remain undisturbed, steady. They are not shaken or agitated by the guna's influence, gunchar navikalyate. They remain firm, nawage. Why? Because they are established in their true nature, the self-atma samsva.
Okay, that's the internal state. How does that translate into how they interact with the world?
This is where that inner state becomes visible. They show profound equanimity. They are alike towards things that normally throw us off balance,
Like what?
like pain and pleasure, dukkha sukha sama, honor and dishonor, mona apamanayo tulya, praise and censure tulya nandatma samstutya, even towards friend or foe tulya mitraripakya,
Wow, that's huge, treating all those opposites the same.
and even towards material things. They regard a clod of earth, a stone, and a piece of gold with an equal eye, samalushma kanikanat. The perceived value doesn't sway their inner balance.
And what about their actions? Are they just passive?
Not necessarily passive, but they aren't driven by that restless, rajasic need to constantly initiate new, ego-driven projects. They're described as sarva aramba parityagi, one who has relinquished all selfish undertakings or initiatives. Their actions arise from a different place, not from egoic desire.
That sounds like an incredible state of inner freedom, real peace. It's not that the gunas vanish entirely, maybe,
Yeah.
but the relationship to them fundamentally changes.
Precisely. The gunas might still ebb and flow in the mind and body. Even a realized person might experience a wave of rajasic energy or tamasic dullness, but the gunatita observes it neutrally from that detached witness perspective. They're carefree, unattached to the outcomes, unswayed by praise or blame generated by the gunas play.
Okay, this state sounds aspirational, to say the least. So how does one actually get there? How do you start on this path towards becoming this stable, detached witness?
The primary means presented in the sources, particularly in this chapter, is unswerving devotion, bhakti yoga. Yes, verse 14.26 states it quite clearly. Maikayo fiabikarya bhaktiyojana sivate sagoan samatitaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate.
Which means?
Translates roughly to, And the one who serves me, the Lord, the supreme reality, with unswerving devotion, that person transcends these gunas and becomes fit for the state of Brahman, for liberation.
So focusing your energy, your attention, your actions in devotion, in service to something higher than the ego, that's presented as the way to loosen the grip of these gunas.
Yes, that constant turning of the mind towards the divine, that devotional practice, is described as the fundamental sadhana, the spiritual discipline that purifies the mind and enables one to rise above these binding qualities. It prepares you for liberation.
And what is that ultimate destination? What is that state of Brahman, that liberation that this path leads to?
The very last verse of the chapter, 14.27, defines this ultimate goal. The Lord states, "Pamanuhi pratitam anatsevyasya shiyatasya vinaga dharmasya sukhashaya.
Okay, break that down for us.
It means, essentially, for I, the Lord, the speaker in the Gita, am the very foundation or abode of Brahman, that ultimate impersonal reality. And Brahman is described here as immortal, amatasya, and immutable, agyasya, the basis of eternal dharma, or cosmic order, shishvatasa dharmasya, and the source of absolute unending bliss, sukhasya aikantikasya.
So the ultimate reality, Brahman, is the goal. And the Lord is saying, I am that goal, that foundation.
Exactly. It declares that the supreme reality, the destination of the spiritual journey, the source of immortality, eternal order, and ultimate bliss, is the Lord himself, awaiting the devotee who successfully transcends the gunas through devotion.
Wow. Okay. We've covered a lot of ground here. We've gone from understanding these really fundamental forces, sattva, rajas, tamas, that seem to constantly push and pull us around,
Shaping our moods, our actions, even potentially our future lives.
to this profound idea that we're actually not these forces, that we're something beyond them, and that freedom from their grip, transcendence, is actually possible.
We explore how the key is seeing the gunas as the dynamic actors within nature, within Prakriti, and then shifting our core identity away from the temporary states they create.
Towards that unchanging witness consciousness, the true self.
Right. And the text highlights unswerving devotion, bhakti yoga, as a primary path, a key practice for achieving this difficult but possible transcendence.
It really makes you think. Considering how often we all experience these different states, that sattvic clarity, the restless drive of rajas, the heavy inertia of tamas, what does it mean, starting today, to consciously just notice their play in your own mind and body?
Just to start observing them.
Yeah. Can you begin to cultivate even a little bit of that sense of being an observer, watching these forces come and go, rather than being completely swept away by them every single time? It feels like the whole deep dive into transcending them really begins with that first step. Simple awareness.
It absolutely does. It's a lifelong practice for sure, but the journey really starts right now with just that conscious recognition, that little bit of witnessing.